There are 49 agents in total, and they're split across 3. That's exactly why they ship 72/commands. This template is built around the idea that the file is the memory, but once you split the roles, design and QA. Hey Sherry, I found a really interesting Claude Code template. Want to hear about it?
Ooh, what is it? Another handy tool.
Yeah, but before that, do you ever run into trouble when you generate code with Claude Code?
Oh, totally. I rush into implementation, and then the design falls apart later. And unless I explicitly say write tests too, it just doesn't bother.
Right. With a one-shot AI session, it tends to skip the design phase or slack on QA. But on a real human team, that stuff actually gets covered, doesn't it?
True. The architect handles design, and QA reviews the tests.
Because roles are split, things rarely slip through the cracks. And the template I found takes that exact idea and applies it to AI.
You mean giving AI actual job roles?
Exactly. A director, a lead programmer, a QA person, and so on. You give AI an org structure and have it run development as a team.
Huh. So it recreates an entire dev team with just AI. That's a pretty fun idea.
It cleared 15,000 stars in just 2 months since release, so it's getting a lot of attention right now. Alright, let's take a look at how the organization is actually structured.
You mentioned directors and leads earlier, but how many agents are there in total?
There are 49 agents in total, and they're split across 3 tiers.
49? That's the scale of an actual game studio.
The top one, Tier 1, is the Director tier. 3 agents, Creative Director, Technical Director, and Producer. This tier needs high-level judgment, so it's configured to use the Opus model.
So they switch models depending on the role.
Right? Tier 2 is the Lead tier, game designers, lead programmers, art directors, and so on. They handle the core of design and implementation, so the Sonnet model is assigned to them.
So they pick the model based on the weight of the decisions. Cost efficiency is part of the design too.
Exactly. And then there's the next tier. Tier 3 is the Specialist tier. Things like gameplay programmers, AI programmers, sound designers, and so on. It's a full lineup of roles specialized for specific domains, and they switch between Sonnet and Haiku depending on task complexity.
So Haiku for light read-only work, and Sonnet when actual implementation is needed.
Exactly. And what's even more interesting is that there are dedicated specialist agents for each game engine.
Like Godot and Unity?
Yeah. Godot, Unity, and Unreal Engine 5 each have their own specialist agents. And for Godot, there are even separate sub-agents for GDScript and C#. So it's broken down pretty finely.
Being able to hand work off to an agent that knows the conventions of each engine sounds reassuring.
Now that we've covered the agent structure, let's talk about how you actually drive them.
With 49 of them, picking the right one to call sounds tricky.
That's exactly why they ship 72/commands. Instead of calling agents directly, you just specify what you want to do with a command.
So the command picks the right agent for you.
Right. And the very first one you'll use is the start command. When you run it, you get 4 choices. No idea yet, or a vague image, or a clear concept, or an existing project.
So it's a system that guides your next move based on your situation.
From there, the work is split into 7 phases: concept, design, pre-production, production, polish, release, and live operations.
The whole game development pipeline is covered.
The key point is that each command reads the artifacts from the previous phase and outputs the next ones. For example, the dev story command lets you run an implementation loop at the story level. It reads the design documents, delegates to the appropriate programmer agent, and even runs the tests.
Because the artifacts chain together, it's harder to skip a step or miss something.
I think this design could be applied beyond games too.
True, the same setup could work for any development that needs a multi-stage workflow. But wait, with 49 agents around, don't they end up moving in different directions?
There are clear rules for that. They have 3 patterns of collaboration. The first one is vertical delegation. A higher level agent hands a concrete task down to a lower level one. For example, the technical director passes the design direction to the lead programmer, and from there, the gameplay programmer takes over the actual implementation.
That's the same chain of command as a real company. Work flows down from the top.
The second one is horizontal coordination. Agents at the same level move things forward by consulting each other, like the UI programmer and the sound designer working out the button sound effects together.
So they coordinate sideways too. But what happens if their opinions clash?
That's where the third rule comes in. When they conflict, they escalate to a shared parent agent for a decision.
So they escalate to a manager. It's pretty interesting that the same flow exists for AI too.
And to keep review instructions from drifting, there's also a system called director gates. Review criteria are managed as 18 gate IDs, and each skill just references those IDs.
So because the criteria are all in one place, any later change reflects across the whole thing.
We've talked about agents and commands so far, but there's one more important mechanism.
There's more. I kind of feel like my brain is already full.
There are 12 automatic check features built in, called hooks. It's a system where the AI automatically catches the things humans tend to forget.
I'm curious what kinds of checks it does specifically.
For example, before a git commit, it checks whether magic numbers are still left in the code, and it verifies whether the format of to-do comments is consistent.
Magic numbers tend to get pointed out in code review. Catching them beforehand is really helpful.
Yes. Another interesting one is gap detection at session start. It detects contradictions like having code without a corresponding design document.
So it notices when you've skipped the design phase and jumped straight into implementation.
There's also a feature that records sub-agent invocation history into an audit log.
So you can trace which agent ran and when, after the fact.
These kinds of unglamorous checks are the ones humans tend to skip because they're tedious. If you automate them with hooks, quality is maintained without you even thinking about it. Besides agents and hooks, there's also a mechanism where the rules change based on where a file lives.
Where a file lives? You mean the directory structure?
Right? It's called path-scoped rules. Depending on the path of the file you're editing, the applied rules switch automatically.
Oh, so it judges based on the path.
For example, when you edit files under SRST gameplay, the gameplay rules get applied. Things like always using delta time or not directly referencing the UI layer. Those kinds of constraints kick in.
So the game logic doesn't end up tied to the frame rate.
Under SRC networking, server authoritative design and message versioning become required.
Networking touches security too, so the rules are stricter there.
On the flip side, under prototypes the rules are loosened, configured so you can write fast and prioritize speed.
For prototypes, the priority really is just getting something working first.
Just deciding where to put the file enforces the rules, so it's hard to forget the checks. If you turn on every feature I've shown so far, the checks get pretty strict.
Yeah, quality goes up, but it also feels a bit heavy.
That's exactly why there's a feature called review mode. You can pick from 3 levels of review strictness.
So you can adjust it depending on the situation?
Right. First, full mode is the setting where every gate fires. It's aimed at teams with multiple developers who want to take quality control seriously.
For real production work, full feels like the safe choice.
Next is lean mode. This is the default, and it only checks at phase boundaries. For solo work or small teams, I think this balance is just right.
Getting the full check every time would really kill the rhythm, you know?
Last is solo mode. This disables every gate so you can move with pure speed.
Sounds great for a game jam, where you have to build something in 48 hours.
What's even more useful is that you can override it per command. You can run lean day to day, then strictly check only the critical features with review full.
So you get to combine the project-wide setting with on-the-spot judgment. That's flexible. Earlier you mentioned saving session state to a file. I want to hear more about that.
When you use Claude Code for a while, the context gets compacted at some point, and when that happens, it can forget what you were just talking about.
Oh, that moment where you're like, wait, what were we talking about? Sharina's been there too.
This template is built around the idea that the file is the memory, not the conversation. It writes to a file called active.md as it goes, recording which section it's working on and how far along it is.
So it's like a living checkpoint. It updates every time work happens.
Right? So even if the context gets compacted, the next session can read active.md and pick up right where it left off.
So as long as the file is there, you can recover even if the session drops.
And there's another handy piece called the status line. It constantly shows things like context usage and the current phase right in the terminal.
Knowing the usage means you can tell ahead of time when compaction is about to kick in.
It also shows a breadcrumb, so you can see at a glance that you're working on, say, combat system, then melee attack, then hitbox.
That's reassuring. Even on a complex project, you don't get lost about where you are. I get how it works now, but how do you actually start using it?
Let me walk through the flow of building a brand new game from scratch. First, you clone the repository, launch Claude Code, and type start. Then 4 choices show up. No idea at all, or a vague image in mind, a clear concept already in place, or an existing project. Those are the 4.
So you can pick a starting point that matches your situation.
If you have no ideas yet, you can kick off ideation with Brainstorm. Once the concept is locked in, Setup Engine configures the engine you'll use, like Godot or Unity.
So picking an engine is what activates those specialist agents you mentioned earlier?
Right. Then once you're in the implementation phase, Dev Story drives the story-by-story implementation loop. Implement, test, confirm completion. You repeat that cycle to build the game up.
Are there commands for the pre-release checks too?
There are. Launch checklist checks how ready you are before release. Then release checklist runs the final sweep, going over every area to make sure nothing's missed.
What if you want to bring it into an existing project later on?
There's a command called iladopt that lets you fold it into an existing project.
So you switch between a whole bunch of slash commands like this.
Exactly. There are 72 in total, so let me walk through them by category. First, the planning and concept commands.
From brainstorming to epic splitting, the whole planning phase runs through commands.
Next up are the implementation and development commands. things like the story implementation loop and code review.
It even covers impact analysis for design changes and managing technical debt.
The QA and testing commands are well stocked too. Everything from smoke testing to security audits.
Designing long-running endurance tests, detecting flaky tests. It gets pretty practical.
There are team formation commands too. You can assemble a combat team, a sound team, things like that, organized by purpose.
So calling them a team means multiple agents coordinate together? That's pretty impressive.
Last is release and operations. From localization to patch notes generation, it supports you even after shipping.
With 72 of them, it really does feel like every stage of game development is covered. Hearing all this, I started wondering, is this only for game development?
The design philosophy itself isn't limited to games at all. The idea of mapping an org chart onto an agent structure is general purpose to begin with.
True. Director, lead, and specialist is a structure you find in every industry.
Right? You can just take the roles in your own company or project and translate them straight into agent definitions. For web development, that'd be something like front-end lead, back-end lead, and infra owner.
The 7-phase pipeline feels like it could carry over to other kinds of development too.
The flow from concept, design, implementation, QA, release, to operations is common across software development in general.
Scoped rules looks useful too. Changing conventions per directory is an idea that fits a lot of cases. It might work for ordinary projects too.
You can decide up front, like SRAC API where it requires input validation and SRC utils forbids side effects. I'd also recommend reading this template as a catalog of sub-agent design patterns.
So you can use it as a starting point, then customize it to fit your own domain.
I've been talking up the good parts so far, but let me also walk through what you should know before adopting this.
Oh, there are caveats too. I want to hear them.
First, this template is currently at version 1.0.0 beta. It's not a stable release yet.
Beta means the spec might still change, right?
Right. The author has even declared they're in rapid iteration, so updates land frequently. And another thing, maintenance is a solo project run entirely by the author, Don Cheetos.
Even with 15,000 stars, there's only one contributor.
The pace of new features and improvements depends on the author's bandwidth, so that's worth keeping in mind.
What about the documentation volume? Renka, you've been showing all kinds of features.
Honestly, there's a lot. There are dozens of markdown files just under the docs directory. There's a start guide to ease you in, but grasping the whole thing takes time.
So instead of trying to learn everything up front, you pick it up as you go.
Also, in the agent definitions, the Claude Code model names are written as fixed values in some places. If Anthropic changes a model name, you may need to follow up and update it yourself.
It looks really useful, but I'll need to keep in mind that it's still a work-in-progress project.
So we've walked through Claude Code Game Studios. What did you think?
Giving AI roles and hierarchy as a concept felt really fresh to me.
With one-shot AI sessions, things tend to slip through the cracks. But once you split the roles, design and Q&A naturally get covered too.
So you're recreating what a human team does, but with AI.
Passing 15,000 stars in 2 months tells you a lot of people were looking for this idea.
It probably hit home for people figuring out how to actually use Claude Code.
It's built for game development, but I think it's a useful reference for organizing AI work in general.
Customizing it to fit your own project sounds fun too.
If you're curious, take a look at the repository on GitHub.
Sharina's gonna build her own game dev org too.
Alright, that's it for today. See you next time.